I need it so bad. I mean, even like the breaks that we do, like we're doing much less than usual because there's just nothing out that's exciting. Tomorrow there's impeccable basketball. It's a super high end product. It's something we don't even break. It's too expensive.
What does a normal
They're
box
metal
cost?
cards. You're going to see breakers doing them around 1,500 to 2,000 a box for 6 to 8 cards. It's just tough because like with this rookie class, I'm not super excited if I don't hit LaMelo or Anthony.
Right.
I mean, even if you hit a Wiseman RPA, I don't know that you've broke even on a box. Probably not.
Oh man.
Like I mean, it's pretty much LaMelo or bust, and maybe if it's a really dope Ant Man, you get to break even. Maybe.
Well, and we've seen it now where it's like basketball is down right now in the hobby, right?
Oh, for sure it is. I mean, there's some stuff down like 40, 50%. What's weird though, and again, it's all perspective based, right?
Yeah, that's true.
For the last year, we've all ate really well, especially if you're on the dealer side of this hobby. We've all done really well, even in the investors. If stuff's still up 10x, but it's not up 15x, it doesn't mean the market burst. It just means we've had a correction down to stuff that the prices should be.
Yeah.
A good example is the Jordan 86-87 Fleer rookie PSA 10s, which are heavily manipulated, in my opinion, and they have been for years. That is a card that, for a long time, you could pick up for 90 to 100 grand. I don't believe it should be worth more than that, just because, again, there's plenty of sealed product on the market. The population's over 300. It's a you see them in big auctions all the time. Yeah, they got up to 750,000, and that was extremely high. And I question the validity of that. Now they are bringing 350 to 450. That is still much better than they were 3 years ago. Does that mean that the Jordan market's burst? No, it's still a mansion in the Midwest. It's probably like an 800 square foot house where you live, but reality is 400K is still 4x. Like if you had a Jordan rookie that you bought 5 years ago, you're up 400,000. Like you're doing good.
Yeah.
You probably should have sold when they were 700, but you didn't listen to the pod, so that's on you.
Well, man. Also, there's a little bit of echo coming off your end. The this is the same thing we were talking about. I think back in February, it's like you couldn't believe that these cards were so high, and
Yep.
and you even said it then. It's like there's going to be a correction at one point or another. And, it's like here we go. It's 4 months later, and that correction's happened. Things have settled back down.
Well, and that's where I don't feel like right now and again, I think it's just a cute hashtag, but the buy the dip scenario, as a dealer, I will tell you it's a lie. There is not a dip, because a dip indicates that we're then going to see it go back up.
Yeah.
I think whatever Kobe Chromes are right now is just what Kobe Chromes are going to be for a really long time.
Right.
And it's not anywhere near where it was at the height, right after his death, or right after Hall of Fame induction. They didn't even really pop after HOF.
Yeah.
I think the new price is what they are. And I honestly think stuff's still a little overpriced. That said, if a card is, let's say, say you go out and you find a Kobe for like 700 that was 1,500 3 months ago, the notion that you're buying the dip and that's going to be 1,500 again, they're pulling the wool over your eyes. That's not real.
Yeah. Well, it's just one of those things. It's like, it could have been that high for so long, especially with, we'll take the basic tops for, example. I mean, so many people were selling those. I saw, they got, some people were trying to sell the raws at one point for $600 to $700. And, people were buying them, I'm pretty sure.
I bought some at 500 and thought I stole them because of what the market was. Now I would pass them. Now I would pass them up at 300 personally.
Yeah. Because there's so many.
I just don't have an interest.
Right.
Yeah. They made a ton of it. It's a heavily collected card. It's a white border card, so it's not condition sensitive, really.
No.
Plenty of PSA 8s and above on the market.
Right.
Myself, I think I have 7 of them at PSA right now.
Yeah.
They've been there for 7 months, 8 months, but still, like, again, don't think we're going to see. And again, people are using terms like a market turnaround, and it's just not real. This is just what the new level is. There's no dip. Things corrected, and this is now the new normal. And the new normal is a $700 card 6 months ago might be 300 now,
Yeah.
but it's still 200 more than it was a year ago.
And the other thing is, you see the longevity of people staying in the hobby. You see, I mean, lately when I've been selling cards, like I am selling them to older people. Like, I'm getting back into the hobby. You know, this is so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm digging up my collection and stuff. I'm like, oh man, this is great. You know, hearing that kind of feedback, it's really great for the hobby and, you know, going forward too.
For sure. And again, not to beat the vintage drum harder than I already do,
Yeah.
the only market I've seen not have any kind of correction so far, vintage has not dipped. If anything, mantles are getting more expensive by the month because it's becoming impossible to find inventory.
Yeah. Yeah. With as much base and just regular cards that were, you know, that are out there and that are in better condition, vintage is definitely a lot better to go after.
Yep, I think it's a great hedge against inflation. I mean, inflation numbers came out the other day; they were astronomical.
Right.
You know, it's a scary time in the finance world, and I think vintage is a great hedge against inflation because again, the guys that buy vintage have money.
Yep.
You know, I think you can make yourself 3 to 5% on every single vintage card year over year. You know, as long as you're buying stars and stuff that's not complete rags, I think you're doing well.
Especially the way with the hobby's going. You know, it's like 5 years from now, that Roberto Clemente Mantle, you know, any of those cards are going to be holding up their value pretty well. You know,
For sure.
the Kobe cards, another example. Yeah, great card, but it's not going to hold near to what those cards would hold because, you know, you have so many collectors out there that are trying to collect these sets now, which is getting more impossible, right?
Well, there's also a production problem. I mean, I think there's a handful of things at play in the vintage market, but there is the production issue of they made a lot of 96, 97 tops.
Yeah.
They did not make as much 52 tops. That's just reality. And also, again, let's like pick any year Mantle 69 to 51, let's just say, you know, that is playing year cards. Once they end up in a collection, a lot of times they don't come out.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and it's almost like somebody has to pass away from to move on from their collection, especially if it's like a vintage 51 or 52 Mantle. Like once you get that in your collection, if you really are a collector, like that's the pinnacle of vintage. You know, unless you're some crazy rich dude that can buy a Honus Wagner, which me personally, I don't even want one. But I mean, it just means nothing to me. I don't even know who that is. You know what I mean? Give me one stat of him. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I think he played for the Pirates. He apparently has a tobacco card. Like that's what I got. You know?
I'd much rather buy a Babe Ruth. Know what that guy did.
Yeah, 100%. Give me a Gowdy Ruth, which I still don't know Ruth as well as Mantle because again, the kind of the timing. It's just like if Cy Young didn't have the Cy Young award, would you really know who Cy Young is? Like, no, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
Like, but that's why I also think Aaron's stuff long term is going to be great because he has a Hank Aaron hitting award. You're going to hear his name every year.
And he's still
It's just like Walter Payton.
The true home run king.
Yeah. I mean, Walter Payton has a Walter Payton award they give away every year. They give a trophy, you know, and it's a good award because it's actually for being, you know, active in your community and service and things that matter. Sweetness is going to be good forever. I think his stuff's underpriced. But the point is, a lot of these guys who get Mantles, myself included, they don't really turn loose of them. You know, even when I do like my vintage stacks in my room, there's usually like one or two Mantles in them, and it's usually stuff I have a plethora of. Like I'm not just blasting off like my early 50s Mantles for fun. Like it's hard to get Mantles from me.
Right. Well, you're also a collector of them too, so.
Well, I just know long term, like it is the best hedge. It's also, and again, you know, some of the younger guys I talk to who are starting to play in this market and have money. I think if you want to go out and put 50K into Donovan Mitchell, that's great. You probably should. I would have said do that 6 months ago, not now, because again, people are thinking to do that now.
Not even 6 months ago. You said 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, you could have done it 3 weeks ago, but I also think it's not terrible to then go out and buy 50K worth of vintage to kind of hedge against if his stuff does not do well.
Exactly. I mean, he knocked down. He had another 30-point game last night, and
Yeah.
we'll get into the basketball a little bit. Let's.
My point though is like my Stidham flyer I took, right? Like I put more money into Jarrett Stidham than probably anyone in the country. Legit.
He could be the starter in New England.
I mean, but reality is on paper I've probably lost $50,000 on Stidham, but in the same time I made 250 on paper and vintage.
Yeah.
It allowed me to take that shot. And in the long run, maybe Stidham gets a starting job down the road. What if 4 years from now we don't know? I mean, a lot of these QBs we don't know. Hell, for all we know, Gardner Minshew is going to win a Super Bowl in the next 4 years as a starter somewhere. It's possible.
Doesn't sound crazy. You saw
I
that?
would love it.
You saw he cut his mullet.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's extremely marketable. Like, I honestly,
I,
he's a guy that I would buy before I would buy Daniel Jones.
Oh, 100%. Because we've seen a little bit of success from Minshew, and if that guy has a system around him, I really think he could do well. I mean, if your quarterback gets hurt and that guy's available for a fifth-round pick, I think he's a steal. I mean,
Well, and it's also weird because, like, I think he's more marketable than a Daniel Jones.
well,
And
yeah,
Jones stuff, I don't know if you've been tracking it at all because I do this for a living. Jones stuff's selling crazy again. Like legit, like 2020 flawless autos of Daniel Jones are bringing $200 to $300. Why?
I've never liked anything about that guy, and
I don't know anything about that cat that makes me want to spend $50 on an auto of him.
all I remember of him is from last year when he almost ran an 80-yard touchdown but fell.
That seems like the highlight of his career right there.
Yeah,
But again, I mean, I just think there's going to be so much interesting, especially as the old guard starts to retire. You know, like when we see Ben go, when we see Tom go, like there's going to be some interesting plays that are going to take place on and off the field. Like, you know, I saw that last night. Russell Wilson was saying like he has no interest in being traded.
yeah.
And I'm just like, or the market was soft on you and no one really needs you right now because we've had 10 QBs drafted in the last two drafts that are actually relevant.
It could be that. It could be the. I mean, yeah, because like there's not that many teams knocking to go out and get Wilson. But also, I just don't think Wilson wants to leave Seattle. I think he looks at it from long term, like, he
Yeah,
has
why
it
would
there.
you?
No, right. That team has been successful. They're going to win 10 games again this year at least.
Yeah.
On this
I mean, he's a
block.
threat to win MVP right now, right?
Of course, yeah. He's always in.
I don't care. I don't care for him, but he's always in the discussion, right? Like, I don't personally look at him and think that that's a top three in the league quarterback. But it's
But
also we have a league that's full of killers right now. Like, there's some great quarterbacks, man.
yeah, no, we could talk, let's talk a little bit about that. You're talking about the Trevor Lawrence stuff earlier. You're hoping he boosts the card market back up. And he,
Yeah, I mean, for football products coming out, he is. I mean, there's honestly, he may not even end up being the best guy in the draft. I mean, there's a lot of people who are hot on Mac for sure, Zach Wilson for sure. Um, but 100% right now, his college, what I kind of consider trash autos, are bringing 500 to 600 for stuff that's not that low numbered.
well,
I can tell you based on my research, Joe Burrows, which was the hottest QB last year,
yeah,
because again, Herbert wasn't anything yet preseason. Like Herbert was just this dude from Oregon. Like he wasn't the killer that came out and threw 300 every game. Burrows were bringing 250, and I think you're seeing literally double out of Trevor Lawrence, and I think that comes from the hype, and also he looks like that guy. Like even watching him yesterday, he looks like the perennial stud. Like that's the dude.
yeah. He looks like. I mean, it's the same thing with Burrow. I mean, you're hoping that this guy turns into the passer that he can be in the NFL. And with that guy and all the others, it's an influx of quarterbacks that have a bunch of hype and that still need to prove themselves, but there's still going to be ton of it going around. And with all this hype, of course, people are. That's why football has been so hot, right? Even in the month of May, we're 4 months away, and you said it last week that this is the hottest you've ever seen football in this time of year.
100%. Like Herbert's are still literally like his national treasures RPAs are bringing $30,000, and he may come out and literally go 0-4 in his first 4 starts.
I mean, if Aaron Rodgers goes to that division, would it be inconceivable?
But it's weird because in the hobby right now, as a dealer, like I kind of don't want some of these QBs to even start. Because look at the hype train behind Tua and how good his stuff sold before he ever took the field. Him taking the field actually hurt him. But then it happened with Herbert, right? Herbert came out, wasn't much, and then bang, like that guy, 300 yards, no interceptions, sets every rookie record, just about one that Manning still has, I believe. That was an amazing feat. But if he never played a game, if Tua never stepped on the field, his stuff would be even higher than it is now.
Yeah, I mean, what you think about like Jordan Love, it's the same thing. And news came out this week is like he looks fantastic in practice. So there's a lot of that. So I mean, I definitely won't touch any Jordan Love stuff. It just doesn't have any interest. Don't have any interest in that. But because all the stuff is so high, it's already high.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think the time to sell it was kind of when we said to sell it, which was when the trade rumors were getting very loud and his stuff tripled in price. Take profit.
This was like
what can he do to sustain that?
The day before the draft, when Rodgers announced that he was doing that, it was a big like deal, because first of all, like, oh my God, who's gonna be the starter? Well, everyone's thinking, of course, it's gonna be Jordan Love. They said. Yep. So, I mean, you have all this positive news around the guy now, and I just still think it's a matter of time until Rodgers gets traded. Don't know where. I think Denver's still hoping, what's his name? Not the Broncos, the Raiders are still, hoping, I think, lingering there. Although I heard some news that the Raiders might not be so in on him. They say they're committed to Carr, but who knows?
Man, Carr's rough.
He is
He's rough. I'd almost rather have Drew Lock
or his brother.
I feel like but I feel like I could develop Drew Lock better.
When
he's still young.
When David Carr came into the league, his brother, I mean, man, that guy should have been a stud, man.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just one of those players. We have Skylar going to join us on the call to talk some basketball.
Right on.
Cool. Hey, what's up, brother? Let's see. That's you in here. Cool. Hey, what's up, Skylar? Can you hear us?
Yeah. Nice to meet you guys. Or nice to meet you,
what's up,
Ken.
man? Yes, sir.
Not much.
Skylar's
looking forward to talking some hoops.
Yeah, man. He's a big Laker guy. Ken loves talking trash about the Lakers right now.
Oh, that's fair.
Well, okay, let me ask this then as a Lakers guy. We'll just set the tone. Off-season moves that you want to see as a fan of that team. Who goes, who stays?
Okay, that is pretty interesting. I definitely hope Anthony Davis stays. Still have a ton of hope for him there. I did see a little Russell Westbrook trade machine the other day, and it all depends if you're a Westbrook guy or not. For me personally, I am. I think he's great. I think if they can find a way to put DeMar DeRozan on. Overall, though, having Anthony Davis at the center position and then having, some guards, some wings maybe could be interesting. I've always loved Kuzma, always. But I do understand if the team parts ways with him in this case after this year. So overall, I don't know. I'm pretty comfortable with the team as is. I think they had a 71-day off season, and that, overall it was just a weird year. Anthony Davis was injured. So even if they ran it back, I wouldn't be disappointed with that.
No, totally. And I like the DeMar DeRozan pitch to it. I think it's a really good, that would be a really good acquisition for them. He's going to be a highly sought after free agent. I think the one move after watching that whole series is Of course, if Anthony Davis is healthy, it's a different story. But Schroeder, man, killed them. Like his moves, I don't see him going back into it next year.
Yeah, he's
I
not
really
getting,
hope not.
Yeah.
And with it being one of those things. So, Skylar, we wanted to bring you on too. We want to talk about, you're highly more knowledgeable in a little bit of basketball. We want to get your take on a few players that in the future, like if you're going to collect any sports cards of these players, whose cards would you go after right now?
Out of anyone going on right now, I think Donovan Mitchell is a big one. Donovan Mitchell is huge.
Yeah, we've been on the Mitchell bandwagon for going on weeks now. Then now his cards have obviously spiked up now since his whole resurgence. What players that aren't in the playoffs right now, who are like sleepers, would you go after going into next season?
Ooh, that aren't in the playoffs. That's very interesting because I think that, right now we're seeing a lot going on in the playoffs, especially, Mr. Devin Booker is just absolutely balling out. Aside from that, though, I mean, yes. Oh, my God. Thank you. Zion Williamson is the absolute man. Zion Williamson will be, I don't know, honestly, I think he could be player of the decade when it's all said and done. He is Shaquille O'Neal in a point guard's body. Like, he's Shaquille O'Neal as a point guard. The way he's able to run the floor, it's unquestionable. I almost forgot Zion wasn't in the playoffs because he's such a, making the All-Star game this year. I mean, he was the youngest with Magic and Kobe. Yeah. And so he's just the next man up. He's absolutely incredible. And yeah, you can't get a better up-and-comer than Zion Williamson. I know Ja Morant showed some flashes this year. I still think Zion Williamson is that dude.
Yeah, I mean, he's fully going to take the spot of LeBron as far as essentially the big man in the league, I think.
Yeah.
Ja has a lot of flair, and I mean, obviously Booker has some things, but reality is if Booker doesn't come out and crush next year, we're going to forget about Booker next year. They're still my pick to win it all just because they're healthy, and I feel like any team that can put up 138 points can win the NBA championship. I've been screaming the Suns for 7 months. That said, Zion is going to be the face of the league. I mean, there's just no other way around it. He's going to be the heavily endorsed guy. He's going to be that guy. I hope they get him some help, and I hope that they can make a deeper playoff run because I think he's going to eventually have to win also. To be able to be player of the decade, he's got to get a ring, quickly. Go ahead, Brian.
No, the other person is Luka. Well, being there, and you guys heard about the news yesterday. I forgot the writers over at The Athletic. They had reported that Luka might not sign the extension there, and then Mark Cuban came out and said and shot down that there's no issues between him and the front offices yesterday. But it was just an interesting story.
I just don't see a world where he's not a career Mav and that Cuban doesn't spend whatever it takes to put pieces around him.
Yeah.
I think that they really want to win another championship, and I think that they can, especially with him at the helm. I mean, he is the leader of that team, right? I mean, why would you want to go anywhere else? I mean, unless you're going to just go team up with Dame somewhere, but honestly, just bring Dame there. I mean, there's other options out there that make sense to me.
The thing is it's really hard to move some of the pieces. They're so tied up in some of those guys, like Porzingis. You have to getting rid of that contract is the first thing they have to do. And one name that was floated around, and Skylar, I like your take on this. What do you think about Kevin Love for Porzingis?
Kevin Love for Porzingis. Now that's very interesting. I think you'd need a little bit more than just Kevin Love with him aging. Although Kevin Love has proven a lot, he can be that dude. He can hit the three, and he can get it done because, Porzingis isn't really the Knicks Porzingis right now. And overall, I mean, we wanted to see that one-legged Dirk, 7-foot big man shooting fade away, but Luka's that dude. Yeah. Luka's the next man up for the Dallas Mavericks. He can hit the one-legged fadeaway. And I think the Luka Porzingis duo isn't quite working out just yet. So they do either need to get rid of that contract or really see what they can do with Porzingis. But it doesn't seem like the right fit at this exact point. So overall, I think Kevin Love could be a great addition to the Mavericks, but I think you want to get at least one or two more pieces that can really help on the floor, on the wing, shooting, defense, all that, like nice 3-and-D guy with that.
Well, it doesn't seem like he was really well prepared to be a number 2. And reality is he's not even a good number 2. I would personally, to get out of that contract, trade him for 50 cents at the soda machine. I mean, he is, to me, and again, I'm very anti-Lakers. I think he is just as bad as Kuzma and Schroeder. I'm also not sold on Caruso being the guy to bring the ball up the court. I think that all three of those guys, honestly, I would trade all of them for a bag of chips right now. Here we go. There it is. There's the entire... There they all are for a bag of chips. They could literally get rid of Caruso, get rid of Schroeder, get rid of Kuzma, and honestly, let's start anybody in the locker room. I think anybody else would be better than those three. And I'm going to tell you now that Porzingis, as far as a collector standpoint, will never come back in the collector's eyes in the sports card market. He is done. If you're sitting on his cards, take them out to the backyard, start them on fire. It'll keep you warm in the winter, because they're never going to put money in your pocket.
Yeah, no, definitely with Porzingis, his cards in the market, you just lost all faith. It's kind of, if you really think about it, I mean, it's kind of like if you compare him to CJ McCollum, like those kind of players who, you really hope will take that next step, but haven't. But do you think the same thing kind of with that, Skylar? Who would you want to see go help Luka there in Dallas?
Well, I think Kevin Love is a very interesting choice. Now, I'm thinking with this whole free agency thing, two interesting guys. Serge Ibaka has a player option, first of all. So I think that could be really interesting. And then Luka and, I mean, it's crazy. The Luka and DeMar as a scoring attack could also be a really interesting combination.
It's going to be interesting to see what DeMar gets, because do you think he's going to be one of those players that get like a 4-year for 88 or something like that? Because I don't know how old he is, but I know he's up there. He's like at least 32 or 33, if I'm not mistaken. But it's going to be interesting to see what kind of market he draws, because he's really one of the only shooters that are going on the open market, right?
Yeah, definitely. And you never know if there's a homecoming with the Toronto Raptors coming either.
Do you see him going back to the Raptors after the way they kind of dished him out?
All depends on, maybe not if Kyle Lowry's going to, and they were best buddies, and it was a pretty messy divorce, but still, you never know.
4 years, $84 million. I think he'd wear a Raptors jersey again.
100%. And he loved it. He wanted to be a Raptor his whole career. We saw how spurned Dwayne Wade was by the Miami Heat. And, of course, he ended up returning home. Very different story. Dwayne Wade won 3 championships with the franchise. Right. However, DeMar DeRozan is one of the greatest Raptors of all time. And before Kawhi came in and really started that debate even more with Vince Carter and now what Lowry's done, DeMar DeRozan was almost the clear-cut greatest Raptor of all time for a bit, and his number 10 will definitely be hanging on the rafters one day.
Yeah, we wanted to bring you on and also talk about tonight's game, big game, Bucks and Nets. What are you seeing? Do you think Nets have enough to pull it off if Kyrie and Harden are out?
I think we're going to see the Kevin Durant game tonight. I think we're going to see a big game out of Kevin Durant tonight. And I think that they do have enough, because I think it's really going to be a matter of Kevin Durant versus Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think we'll see at least 40 from Kevin Durant, although the Brooklyn Nets don't have enough defense. So that's the only reason Milwaukee could pull it up. But in this case, I want to go against the odds, and I want to bet on a special Kevin Durant game out of Brooklyn where they somehow win a game tonight.
Ken, go ahead and give us your take.
I mean, my concern is even if Durant goes off for 60, right? Let's give Durant 60, which is unheard of. But sure, he goes off for 60. Blake goes off for 23.
If that could happen.
Again, how do we get to 119 that you're going to need to beat them? I just don't think they have enough firepower, and they're not going to get enough. They're not going to get enough stops. I see no path to victory for them with both of their starters off. And again, a lot of the reason that Harden's even useful on the floor is not necessarily his offense. It's because he draws away from the double teams that KD has to face. With him off the floor, I mean, they're going to put two guys on him at all times. It's going to have to be Blake Griffin that beats him. I don't think it's going to be KD. I just see no scenario where they're not double teaming him on every possession. They should just swarm him nonstop. Because if you do that, that's your path to victory.
Yeah, and PJ Tucker has been in last game mostly. He put great defense on Durant, and if you have that guy, you send a second. And you don't have another ball handler or anything like that to bring it up. It's going to be really interesting.
I just don't see a scenario where the Bucks don't win by double digits tonight. Obviously, Vegas sees it differently. And that line, I think, could move closer to game time, too, as more of the public is like, Jesus, all the stars are out. But one, like, we're good. I think that line could literally get weird and get to like 6. So if you are a wagering enthusiast, if you like it at 4.5, you better hit the button because it's. I think that line could be on the move, and there is also the notion that apparently now Harden is no longer deemed out. He's now questionable, right? Or he's now day to day. What did they say with him?
He's doubtful for tonight's game.
He's doubtful.
Yeah.
So I mean, if that changes to on the floor, again, that's a little thinner for KD to do what he does. I just don't see a path to victory for him, man. I could be wrong. They may blow him out, and if they do, then that's your championship team right there. If they can win without their stars, then congrats to them.
Right, yeah. And it's like it would definitely make a more interesting finals. Like either team to advance there, and to see what happens with even last night's game between the Clippers and the Jazz. Mitch, they seem just to figure it out. They're gonna have to figure something out there with Mitchell. Because watching last night's game, after Mitchell brings the ball up the court every time, they're just pressuring him full court. And,
yeah, for sure.
And he's the only one initiating the offense. This is where you really notice that Mike Conley, him being out really affects that team.
Yeah, I don't think the Jazz getting out at all. I mean, they may be able to somehow pull off this series, but I don't see them getting out. I don't think they're the Jazz team that they were 2 months ago.
Really, what do you think, Skyler?
With the Utah Jazz, yeah, I think that they got beat bad by the Clippers yesterday. And overall, to me, I was always kind of shocked they were the number 1 seed. I think Donovan Mitchell is a special player. He's a modern-day Dwayne Wade. You got Dwayne Wade with a stake in the team now. So Donovan Mitchell will be a beast for a long time to come. Mike Conley is great as well. And overall, though, oh, man. It's tough, especially with you guys, mentioned I'm a Lakers guy, but Kawhi did win one for Toronto, and I am Canadian myself. So I think that, yeah, it's looking like the Clippers could go to the West. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Chris Paul representing the West in the finals, though.
It's really an interesting time in basketball. It's like with Chris Paul being able to. Because I never thought that guy would make a conference title again, after being traded out of Houston when they had their opportunity to beat the Warriors. I didn't think I would see him again. Now then, them playing up with against Kawhi and Paul George, if that is going to be the conference finals, it really would be interesting. Because I don't know if maybe the Clippers can make it to the finals. Maybe they do have a chance, but it's all wide open right now, especially with Kyrie and Harden both being hurt.
I just think if you've watched every game of this postseason so far, it's hard to argue that the Suns are not firing on every cylinder. And it's not just Booker. I mean, Booker has been the most dominant player, in my opinion, in this entire final so far. Like, he should be the MVP of the finals as of right now.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, Donovan Mitchell, when he came back after missing game 1, he's been lights out too. He helped them, win 4 straight against the Grizzlies, and then he helped. I think the Suns, they have been playing phenomenal. They did catch a little break there against the AD being hurt, and then they still crushed the Lakers, and then the Nuggets being without their second star too. It really has been able to make a little bit of an easier run for the Suns. It's just, but Booker definitely has been the best shooter. I think Chris Paul has been a much more influential player for them instead.
And surprisingly not mummified and taped up, because you would assume that by now he'd already be in his wheelchair for the rest of the season, because that's what he does.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable that he's not limping right now. Like he's before this is all said and done, he will get hurt again. Like, I mean, that's just him. But I will tell you now, the Suns handled the Lakers, even when they had all of their made out of glass players, the old men with the canes and the old man AD. Boy, he's great.
The 28-year-old AD
who plays like he's 50. Unless he wants to turn it on.
He'll be back.
But that's what's so terrifying to me with him. Like, he's a guy that it just feels like, I don't know. I watched him at Kentucky because I live in the Midwest, and man, he was a beast. And I just don't see the hunger anymore. I see an old plodding man that's the number 2 to LeBron. That even when he most recently was asked, "Hey, does LeBron have to hype you up?" and he's like, "No, I don't need hype from that man. Like, I'm my own man." Like, he's going to play second fiddle to LeBron as long as they're together, and maybe that's great as long as you're winning. But they're not winning. They got bounced in the first round.
Yes,
bounced in the first round.
Okay. But the thing is, though, that is a total. They won the championship less than a year ago, and Anthony Davis was averaging 27.7 points in the playoffs there. Yeah. And so I think Anthony Davis will be fine. I think a 71-day offseason was too much. The guy is 6'11". And he did have still a couple of flashes of those 42-point performances, 34-point performances, multiple 30-point games. I think this season will be the outlier, and Anthony Davis will come back better than ever, personally.
Well, and that's the thing is, too, it's like here's with a fully healthy Lakers team, LeBron's going to do the complete opposite of what he did in the beginning of the season. Instead of trying to go for the MVP, he's just going to put that to rest. I don't think he's going to try to go for the MVP anymore. Because he would have been the MVP if he would have stayed healthy easily. There would have been Jokic wouldn't have touched him just because of the fact that the Lakers are already number 1, and LeBron was putting up those incredible stats, and he was doing it without Anthony Davis too, who was already hurt. So I think the Lakers are just going to do what the Clippers did this year. Kawhi missed 20 games, was never really hurt, but just rested. And that's what's going to happen.
Well, let's also say this, just because, I am on the Suns wagon for the last 6 months plus, and I've got the receipts to prove it. Not only did they handle one of the favorites to win it all, regardless of injuries or not, they handled them. They also just swept a pretty good team. So to say that, I don't know that you can point at any other team right now who is as dangerous as the Suns if they continue to stay healthy and continue to shoot at these percentages. Who's beating them? The Nets with a bunch of guys limping? I don't believe that.
You're still going up against KD, or the Bucks could still win. I don't think they could soundly beat the Bucks because who's going to stop Giannis? They have nobody to guard Giannis. Nobody.
And the thing is, I'm personally happy if the Suns wins because then it shows that the Lakers got beat by the best team. I think the Anthony Davis injury actually shows Anthony Davis's value to this team. And I think that 71-day offseason on a 6'11" frame was just too much. I always thought Anthony Davis would become that number 1 guy for LeBron James. And so that's an interesting take, Ken, because this season was, but we'll see what happens next year for sure.
Yeah.
So who I put on Giannis is going to be Cameron Payne, because worst case, if he gets his nose brushed, you can maybe get a technical 2 and get him out, flagrant 2.
Worst ejection of all time.
That was
we'll get Giannis kicked out so we don't have to deal with him. Just fall on your face. It's fine.
That I cannot believe they ejected him for that. And did you guys see? Was it yesterday that you sent me the memo, Kim? About the NBA is going to finally address their flopping rules, like the unnatural motions of shooting the ball. How players go into others. You're not going to be able to do that next year, which I love.
Well, and Chris Paul does that regularly. He draws a lot of fouls with that weird, he brings the ball up and he just consistently gets shooting fouls.
Everybody does it. It's just become.
There's a few guys that sell it well.
it's just become a natural thing for the league. 10 years ago that was
Mhm.
never a thing, but now it's become a thing in the last 10 years for sure.
To a degree, though, I think it also opens up more 3-point shooters too, because with those unnatural movements, you can't guard as close. Because again, you're gonna pick up cheap fouls if you're on top of your guy. Like it gives the shooters some room, which is why I think we're also seeing so many just crazy long threes because they have space for it now.
Yeah, and players are just the players that are coming to the league. They just practice those more too. That was never a thing 30 years ago, 20 years ago, as much.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah.
insane.
Skylar, who do you got winning the finals, man? Before we let you go here.
Man, that's an interesting one. I honestly, and it's funny because it works, in my opinion, in the favor of the Lakers and in the favor of what Ken wants here. We're seeing some really interesting stuff. I don't think it's the Sixers. I don't think it's the Hawks. Milwaukee Bucks is definitely a possibility if they make it out. But overall, I think the team that is clicking on all cylinders here is the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah,
Well,
And that shows the Lakers got beat by the best.
Let's just mention the 76ers. Literally, Embiid went 0 for 12 from the field in the second half.
Yeah.
And that guy was in talks to be the MVP. He's awful. Stop. Like, I've seen him have some good games, but man, I think for a big man, I'd take almost anyone else in the playoffs right now. That guy is not going to win them a championship. That is not a championship caliber big man.
I think the other issue too is every time he walks down the floor, he's grabbing his knee. That's the other thing about it. And
he's old hobble leg. He's AD with like 40 more years on his body, it looks like.
Yeah. And, give credit to Trae Young, yesterday too. I mean, man, a guy who I was not really high on, man, he's definitely proved me wrong.
Which is weird because I'm in the hobby and I don't like him. Like, I don't like him even in this villain role, which is good for his exposure. I don't really care for his game. He's very undersized, comparatively speaking, to the other guys in the league. Like, I don't see him being a threat a year from now.
Yeah.
And he came up with Luka. I mean, he came up with, one of the best draft classes, we've seen. But in the same breath, man, like, I have zero interest in buying Trae stuff because I think if they do get eliminated, which I believe they will not move on, there's no scenario where next year I see them as a threat to win it all again. I just don't.
Yeah.
Especially with the East it's getting a little bit more stacked. This was a few years ago. It was the East wasn't as stacked. Now it's kind of evening out with the East and the West, which is a good thing for basketball. Yeah. Skylar, is there anything else?
Yeah, the days of the super team I wish would kind of end too, but that's kind of the way it is now.
I think it might be coming to an end, or at least evening out. But
I mean, if the Nets win this year, is it because they were the best team, or is it because a bunch of guys who were pretty good all went to the same team? I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Harden could have got traded to the Sixers if the Houston owner was more logical and just would have taken Ben Simmons for Harden, which now seems like, why didn't you do that? It would have just been the best thing for them, because, at least they would have.
So, Skylar, do you feel like Ben Simmons has a good basketball mind? Because I watch him play, and I swear I feel like he's passing up shots that he should be taking. Like, I'm looking at him on the floor, and I just don't feel like he's got a good mind for the game. Like, that's not the leader of that team to me. And I know a lot of guys who are heavily invested in him and who really believe in that kid. And I'm looking at him going, again, I would trade him for a bag of chips. Like, that guy to me is not the guy.
Yeah, he does have. I think that he has a good basketball mind outside of scoring, which,
mildly relevant. Mildly relevant
just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Great defender. Fantastic defender.
Phenomenal defender. That's the thing. Phenomenal defender. Very good passer. Good rebounder. But, what?
Yeah.
Like
could get to the basket, but
also doesn't. He doesn't attack like he could.
No.
I mean, watch these games back. He does not just drive the lane. That's the other thing I've never understood about these bigger guys. I mean, he's got size on almost everyone defending him, put the ball down and drive the lane. Especially in this league, you're going to pick up a cheap foul, worst case.
No, that's it.
Yeah.
That's a valid point. Skylar, we're going to switch here. Is there anything else you'd like to say before you go, man? Is there anything before you go?
No, thank you guys so much for having me on. Check out my podcast, Mamba Moments on the Believe Network, staff writer for Lakers Nation, also on their YouTube channel there. You can find me at Skylar Treppel, Twitter and Instagram, and really appreciate you guys having me on. This was excellent basketball chat. Happy to do it again anytime. And yeah, you guys both know your stuff. This was fun and pleasure speaking with you. See, we have different opinions on the Lakers, but we can all get along.
Totally, man. Thanks for your time.
Cheers. All the best.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, man. And no, let's transition over to a little bit of baseball, man. We want to talk about we got a little bit of MVP conversation going in. DeGrom-inance, Jacob DeGrom leading the board, and that will lead into your card of the day.
So this is one card I have on my desk. It's this huge, oversized 2019 Topps DeGrom. I mean, the thing's bigger than my head. I don't understand it. I hate that we're talking about a Mets player because I'm just so anti-Mets. That said, that guy, he's doing some things. He's actually got more hits than he has. More hits than ERA points? Like, I'm baffled by what's going on.
First of all, man, I like being even if I wasn't a fan of the Mets, like, man, it's incredible watching him. He literally pounds the ball inside. His sliders hit like 93 miles an hour. Guy's unbelievable. He's turned into a must-see. It's kind of like watching 2014 Kershaw, 2012, I think 2011 Justin Verlander. When they both won their MVPs. But he's having a better year. It's unbelievable, man. He's having a better year.
What is your hope for him to, like, for the rest of this year?
To win the World Series.
Like, at this point. Well, yeah. Is that feasible?
Yeah. They are. They're number one in the division. They're Braves have, the Mets have shockingly, with 15 injuries, for like a straight month and a half, they've had like 15 injuries. Finally, guys have come back in the last week or two. But, man, it's been DeGrom, even though he's been hurt a little bit too. He's missed a few starts. He's literally been the leader of the team. And, with him going strong and the offense producing runs, with that guy at the head of the staff, we've seen it before where pitchers could take over postseasons. That's what I think is next for DeGrom. It's head.
How's your big offensive pickup doing? I haven't looked lately.
Oh man, the Lindor thing has been awful, and we could talk about him and what he's just. I think people did invest in him when he went to the Mets because his cards did spike a little bit. I'm so glad I did because I just was never when I saw the numbers for the contract, it just scared me. I was like, first of all, of course, being a Mets fan, I think it's a terrible contract. Lindor's a fantastic player, but he's hitting like 220. Like,
oof.
He's hitting not even close to but his offense has gone up. He was hitting like 190. So he's been hitting better as of late, but still, for a guy whose bat speed has gone down, I think, or his bat to the ball or something like that has gone down or something like that. If this was something that Buster Olney was talking about on the Baseball Tonight podcast, and I was like, that's really interesting. And it's gone down like in the last 3 years, like every year it's gone down just a little bit. So yeah, the Lindor thing scares the hell out of me, of course. But man, it's been.
So I have to ask this: are those Tough Mudder emblems behind you held on by painter's tape?
They are held on by painter's tape. I was doing a school project yesterday, and I had to do.
Is that what those are, though? Is that confirmed? Are those Tough Mudder medals? What is that?
Spartan race medals and like 5K, 10K medals. I left them on there. Just too lazy to put them down last night. Got so much going on, man. I'm trying to bust out my homework before I head out to New York tonight. So we're flying out tonight, so I'm like trying to My homework's due Sunday, but I'm like trying to scramble it all in there before I head out.
What's happening with the dog? The dog seems like it would not be happy about this. Has the dog been informed?
The dog has been informed. The dog is
How's
passed.
that going?
The dog is passed out right now. It's going to be 105 degrees today. 105, man. I don't know what it's
That
like.
seems hot.
Yeah, it's a little hot, but we're going to.
Yeah, I think it was like it's 83 today here. I got the fire pit going. I got the grill on already. The fire pit's going.
Nice.
The pool's warm. Things are good.
That's great, man. Yeah, we'll be going in the pool later. But yeah, man. Back to that. The medals were just there for.
Card talk, I want to tell you this too. So here's something I think I found in a collection the other day. I think it's pretty cool.
That's cool.
This is a Los Angeles Police Department Bo Jackson Special Edition Jumbo card
That's interesting.
from Texaco. And on the back, it has like, thank you for supporting the police from Los Angeles, etc. I don't know. It's interesting. It's an interesting card.
Has that card been graded or anything ever?
I mean, has it ever been like other people? Like, yeah, probably. I mean, almost everything gets graded, right? But no, not me. I've never graded one. I just think it's interesting.
That's the one.
It has a little value. It's not crazy.
Oh, that's cool. Cool card though.
But Gary V's been talking up a lot of like the alternative cards and kind of the weird cards you don't see, which is odd because one of the big discussions I have when we curate collections for vintage collectors is once you get all the Manels from 51 to 69, just your base like tops and Bowmans, what I usually tell people is to start going after the weird stuff from the 50s, like the potato chip cards, the dog food cards. There's a hot dog card of Mantle. Like there's some weird stuff you don't see. And I just think those are really good investments.
Those are cards I didn't know there's a dog food card.
Yeah, Red Heart dog food. And it's actually really nice. Like the card looks awesome. It's from the 50s.
Got it.
And a lot of them are going to be in terrible shape. So if you find a nice one, another one's Dandy potato chips. A lot of those have grease stains on the back. Last year, I sold a PSA 7 that was stain free. It brought tons of money. I sold it to a local guy that wanted it.
Nice.
But I just think some of those alternative Mantles are going to be really good long term too. And I think in the other kind of tying it back into like that Bo Jackson, if you have every Bo Jackson card made, which would not be that difficult to attain as far as non-modern autographs, sure, like let's eliminate that stuff. If you don't have that one that I just showed, that's kind of a cool one. It's a weird one.
Well, especially being any one of the sheriff cards, it's kind of neat.
Yeah, I mean, it's different.
Card on my desk, since we're talking Mets today, got my Dwight Gooden card. Helped Mets win '86 World Series, and
he's got just a little something on his right. He's got just a little. I don't know.
But
yeah,
man, Dwight Gooden, good player. A lot of white stuff around him, but I
got to see him a lot growing up. Actually, it was him and I had to see him and Howard Johnson a lot. Living in Port St. Lucie where they do spring training, I was there for every game just about. So I got to see Gooden a lot. I got to see Howard Johnson a lot. Those were kind of the two guys that were always around that would even walk around the ballpark after games. You could get autographs if you wanted them.
That's kind of cool. You don't see a lot of like their stuff floating out there in autographs for all that.
No. I don't know if the demand's really high either, though. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, not too sure. Maybe for just more of like Mets fans or like fans of that era and watching.
That's reasonable.
For like their stuff. But yeah. Man, and I had like one more thing like to touch on, for going back to talking, not even like vintage baseball, but getting into that 75 to early 80s year. Is that like heavy sought after stuff? Like, do you consider that more vintage now or what?
To me, I put vintage as anything baseball related pre 79 and basketball anything pre 86. Football, it's got to probably be, to me, almost like 69 and before.
Do you think the football vintage market is going to pop with all this football hype going on? like the Terry
My
Bradshaw
answer
stuff?
is no. And if you'd have asked me that a year ago, I would have said I thought there could be a chance. If it was going to happen, it would have happened in this most recent boom.
Right.
It was widely ignored. And it's strange because, again, you can buy a Walter Payton rookie card for $200. You can buy a Johnny Unitas rookie for $300. Like, Namath is more expensive. One, it's a large card and you don't really see it. But even it, you can have for $1,000 or less. And we're talking about like the best guys from that era.
Right.
Like the best guys. And you can buy it for 1/30th of a Herbert RPA. That's just reality, though.
It's so crazy, you know, to think about, like, you know, especially with like with those other guys who mean something. Bradshaw, 4 rings.
Yeah.
Montana. I mean, Montana stuff sells for a little bit more, you know, I guess.
But even like a Staubach rookie, it's nothing.
Yeah.
Like some of these guys that actually are considered greats, like you can buy their stuff for nothing.
Yeah, it's weird because, you know, football being the most popular sport, you would think their vintage stuff would bring something in. I don't know if that maybe it's signed, maybe there's still something to come with all this. Maybe there will be a boom in it. But I mean, you know, if you could get a few cards for cheap, you know, why not?
I don't think there's anything wrong with grabbing them. I think if it was gonna happen, it would have happened during this run up of everything else.
Of course.
It was still ignored. It's always just kind of been meh. You know, and it's weird because like a 55 Bowman baseball common's worth $5 to $10 for a common. A 55 Bowman football common you can buy for $1. Like it's so odd. Like, but just no one.
Yeah, that is the one bizarre thing because, you know, the basketball vintage stuff sells for more than the football stuff.
For sure. For sure. I mean, I see that market getting better. Like, I see basketball vintage actually continuing to rise, especially like 60s stuff that's really hard to find. Like, you just don't really see it. No. I see a lot of vintage football, and when I do, it's cheap and no one's buying it. You know, I was at a card show this past weekend. There was tons of vintage football. Nobody was buying it.
God, it's just so strange. I mean, you know, we hear about these guys all the time, Broadway Joe. You hear like all this stuff, and their stuff is really affordable considering these were the guys back in the day and the first ones to sort of do it all. And, you know, but vintage basketball sells for mad money. The Bill Russell stuff, the Moses Malone, all that stuff, man, sells for mad money.
Yeah. Go try to buy a Pistol Pete Maravich rookie. It's insane. It's insane. But you can go buy, I mean, my God, I could rattle off 100 names, but a Mean Joe Green rookie is worthless. Ed Too Tall Jones, like these are guys that were iconic in the sport. And I mean, modern collectors don't even know their name because they're not cards that are on their radar.
Right. Oh, man.
And again, what is it going to take to push vintage football into the mainstream of investable collectibles? I do not know of a single thing that can push vintage football into that. I don't see it, man.
Only if you see Logan Paul wearing a vintage Joe Namath card around his neck.
Hey, yeah, as much as I don't like it, I do like them talking about collectibles on a mainstream platform.
No, that's great.
I don't have to care for the fight. I personally think it's kind of...
It's terrible. For being a boxing fan,
yeah.
It's terrible. But,
which, I mean, in my opinion, boxing is kind of dead anyway at this point. I think UFC destroyed boxing 10 years ago and no one let them know yet. But...
yeah.
I mean, I will tell you this. I am super stoked for UFC Select hobby boxes are coming out in the very near future, and I think that is going to become a staple in this hobby for a while.
For sure. I mean, we saw how the UFC Prism stuff did. I mean, the Select stuff, I'm sure it's going to be off the charts.
I think it's going to be, honestly, because of the color and because of the golds. And what I like is there is UFC on television, not for pay-per-view. In the old days, you had to buy the pay-per-view.
Yeah.
I think the more they have free fights available, the better that market will be also.
100%. Yep.
Because not everybody wants to spend $60 for 5 fights, especially because even like the most recent card, I only knew 2 guys on the card. And I've been a UFC fan for a long time.
Well, I mean, I remember when I bought the McGregor, I forgot he fought Cowboy Cerrone.
Yeah.
I bought that fight, and McGregor beat him in 10 seconds. And I was like,
Yep.
you know, some of the undercard fights, I think they were good, but they were okay. They weren't great. But
see, that was like Tyson fights in the 90s. You would buy a fight, and like you would get 2 undercard bouts if you were lucky, and that fight, and it was over in like 1 round or less. I mean, he was dismantling dudes in seconds.
Yeah.
And it was just like, man, I just spent 80, and it was expensive too. It was like $80-$90 back then. You know, at least UFC is like 60. It's like, it sucks, but it's not as bad.
yeah, the demand for stuff back then, you know, now it's a lot more attainable, and you can watch YouTube, whatever, after. So, you know,
Yeah, I mean, literally within minutes of a fight being over, you can see the highlights of the fight if you want it.
man, it's nuts.
You know, it's almost like, do you really need to buy it? You know, you can also go to like B-dubs, or I don't know if you have BW3s there, but you can go to like a wing place or a sports bar and watch the fight a lot of times too, if it's a bar that streams it.
No, exactly. Yeah, no, totally. You could have all those places. Even regular bars would just have it. I know they're not allowed to.
Yeah.
But they do. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably a good idea. It brings people in. But I don't know. I think UFC is here to stay. Next time we get together, I want to do a little more research on my end. But F1 racing, Formula One racing, golf, and UFC are all very hot right now in the market. You want to talk about buy the dip? There is no dip in those.
No way.
Those are on fire right now.
The
I recently
One.
watched a guy pull a Formula One 101 patch auto and get almost 50,000 out of it.
Wow.
F1 is on fire. It is on fire.
It's such a big market in, you know, Europe, right?
Yep. And I mean, we could also say throw soccer in there. I mean, soccer stuff's selling out of this world.
Yeah, especially with the World Cup approaching next year.
I mean, I would rather hit a Mbappe patch auto number to 10 right now than a Mahomes patch auto to 10. Money-wise, you're going to be money ahead on the soccer.
Yeah. Especially with
That's crazy.
The hottest event in the world's coming up, you know, next year.
Yep.
So you want that guy, because once the World Cup starts, all these stuff, you know, if you have it graded, I mean, if you have some Christian Pulisic, you know, rookie cards, you know, whatever they're, you know, tiger stripe, whatever, diamond.
Oh, yeah.
Man, that stuff's gonna sell for, you probably pick it up for about $1,000 to $1,200 right now. That stuff's gonna sell for like 32 to $5,000, I think, when it comes.
Yeah, I could see it.
Yeah, well,
write that down. We'll see if you're right. Write it down. Put it on your list. That's your pick. That's your pick.
Well, no, I mean, we'll get into some of the soccer stuff next week. I've watched it a little bit, but we'll get into just the market of it. No, we don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, man. You have a good one, Ken. We'll talk next week.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.